Hi everyone. This is a quick review of week 2 of the Fundamentals of Python Bootcamp by Binda Better. Um, this was essentially the first class where we started the basics of Python and we learned what we were going to do for the rest of the bootcamp. So let's get into it on the technical side, obviously. So. So yeah, some basic stuff we covered were running code, what variables and data types are, what conditionals and loops are. We covered loops in actually week 3, because we wanted to really hone down on the fundamentals. So yeah, those, and we talked about some final project details. We discussed some problems and project ideas, and then we just had a wrap up and we played Blockade. So, the bootcamp timeline. So far up to week 2, we've only had the introductory meeting, which was just something to get you guys started with the idea of sustainability and programming and what software really is. But yeah, this week 2 and 3 are really going to be the meat of the bootcamp, where we're going to be really honing in on the basics and fundamentals of programming with Python, so you guys can build efficient and creative projects. Again, donations are much appreciated. You can donate at the link right here. I'll post it in the Google Classroom as well. But yeah, we work very hard to bring you these events and boot camps, so any amount would be greatly appreciated. So with that, let's get started with the first section, which is just running code. So we covered this in the last meeting, which was week 1, which we talked about how computers actually run code, right? Computers read instructions line by line, which is specifically called interpretation, and that is specific to a type of programming language called interpreted languages, which are languages like Python, which we're working with right now. And essentially, how these kind of languages work are within this structure right here, kind of. So execution starts at the first line, right? And then later on, variables are created in the memory, which I covered later on when we were talking about variables, and then logic, the what your code is, what your code follows after the first couple of lines is how the program decides which lines to run next, right? Again, line by line. Keep that in mind, right? And then in Google Colab, this same process is carried out with code blocks, and we'll see that as well once we get to the coding side of variables and conditionals today. So yeah, variables and data types. A variable, in simple terms, is a labeled box that holds a value. So, for example, if I said, "What is my name?" I would say Arush Chavali. So you are assigning the placeholder value of name to Arush Chavali, right? So in this case, name is a word, right? Because you would define name as a word because words are because names are words, right? If you think about it, Arush Chavali is uh, a combination of letters, right? So it would be classified as a string integer, which we'll get into when we cover data types. But essentially, that's all you need to know, right? Um, you assign variables, basically placeholder values with the equal to symbol, and you must use underscores uh, with for variable names that have multiple words in them. Coming to variables, there's an important concept here called data types. And data types are essentially the type of data that you store, hence the name data types, right? So strings, as we've talked about before, is textual information. So that would be inside quotation marks. So anything like, "My favorite superhero is Spider-Man." That was a sentence that I spoke, so that would be in quotation marks, and that would be defined as a string variable. Whole numbers with no decimal points are called integers. Floats which are integers with decimal points you can think of, um, are floats, are float variables, right? And then lists are an ordered collection of items that can store multiple items, hence a list, right? It's pretty intuitive. This is why Python is pretty easy to catch on. Um, but yeah, on the Google Colab side, we have right here, um, this is how you define variables, each type of variable. So you have the integer variable here, you have the string variable here, you have the float variable here, and you have the list variable here. List variables are defined in square brackets, and for the other ones, it's quotation marks for strings, and then the same for integers and floats, except you include decimal points for floats. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. And now we have conditionals. So conditionals are essentially just a true or false question that you're asking the computer, and based on the value of that true or false question, which is a Boolean, you're telling the computer to do something. So for example, if I asked a question, did I go to school did I go to school today? And say if it was a weekday, yes, I, Arush Shivali, would go to school. So the answer would be true, right? So if a conditional is true, then the if condition runs, the if block runs, right? Whatever code you wrote under there, right? But if the conditional is false, say it was a weekend and I did not go to school, then the else block runs, where it's um, the computer runs the program where if a conditional is false, right? So if else, which can be thought of as true or false. You can also use elif blocks, which are short for else if, and essentially what you do in them is that if the first conditional is incorrect, then you will check for the next conditional and the next conditional before going to the final else block, right? So if I say, did Arush eat 100 grams of sugar today? And then obviously that's a no. So then because that's true, maybe you want to say else elif, did Arush eat 100 say 50 grams of sugar today, and then say that is a yes, right? So you don't need to run the else block there. You can just run the elif block for any other program that you want instead of being forced to use the you know, true or false, like that binary kind of thing. Um, yeah, that's essentially what a conditional is. Code implementation for that would be right here. So say I have a variable called my age, right? My age is 12, right? And if my age is greater than 10, then say you are eligible for a 50% discount because I'm very young. And then say if my age is less than 18, you are eligible for a 25% discount because I'm young, but I'm not too young. And then else is, you're greater than 18 or you're equal to 18, your age, so you don't have any discounts. That's essentially how it works. And then these are some common comparison operators that you use, which you can refer to the Google Colab, which has been posted on Google Classroom. But yeah, that is the technical side. And on the project details side, we covered how they will be building the project, the sustainability application. So currently in week 2, they will be on the brainstorm phase, right? And then they will, after they have a solid idea of what they want to build and something that's viable for the scope of the bootcamp, they will build and create the core of the project, right? With Python, and then lastly, they will fix any bugs and finalize their code. And this, for example, they can build an eco risk tracker, which checks um, each day's data points for CO2 levels, and it will print warnings if the CO2 levels in their area are high. So that's a cool project that is related to sustainability that they can do. And this is essentially just a quick plan that you can use to brainstorm. So go out into nature, explore things, notice and keep track of things, right? Think about how problems can be solved, right? Every problem is different, and some may be too complex or some may be too simple. So it's really important that you choose the right one and use a tracker to note down good ideas. And this is a tracker that I suggested. You can find this problem choosing guide on Google Classroom for week 2 materials as well. Um, this phase will probably run for around weeks 2 to 3, right? So this week and next week, and then by week 4, you know, you guys should have a solid idea on what you're doing. Then we finished up with Blookit and a final conclusion, which you can see here. Just for week 2, we did not cover loops because they were a little more complex and they required, and we just really wanted to spend more time on these. But yeah, loops were covered in week 3. You can find that in week 3. And then finally, GitHub is a collaboratory platform where people share their code. That's what we'll be using to share all the projects in the end. Their homework was to just create one small Python program to understand Python better and work on what we did and find 3 problems in the environment and kind of keep track of them. And then we played Book It, and then that's it. So all the materials can be found in Google Classroom for week 2, and that is all I have for this short review. Thank you.